The first time I saw Karen standing at the edge of my pool, arms crossed like she owned the sun itself, I knew trouble had officially moved into Cedar Ridge Estates. Cedar Ridge was one of those suburban communities that pretended to be friendly, while quietly training its residents to spy on one another. Perfect lawns, identical mailboxes, cameras mounted like decorative gargoyles, and an HOA board that treated the bylaws like sacred scripture. I'd bought the house 6 months earlier, lot, private fence, and most importantly, a pool that had been grandfathered in before the HOA was even formed. That little detail mattered a lot. I wasn't loud. I didn't throw parties. I worked from home, kept to myself, and paid my dues on time. The neighbors barely noticed me, which was exactly how I liked it. What they didn't know it, no one in Cedar Ridge knew us that my remote consulting job was a cover. I was embedded undercover with the FBI, assisting a joint task force investigating corruption tied to local law enforcement, unions, and private HOA security contracts. Ban Karen. She was about to walk straight into a federal nightmare. It started on a Saturday afternoon. I was floating in the pool, sunglasses on, letting my mind unwind after a brutal week of reports and surveillance logs. The gate creaked open. "You can't be here." I lifted my head. Karen stood there in a floral blouse, white capris, phone already recording. Her haircut alone screamed HOA authority. "Pretty sure I can," I said calmly. "It's my pool." She scoffed. "This pool is considered a shared amenity under HOA guidelines." I actually laughed. That was my first mistake. "No," I replied. "This is a private pool. It predates the HOA. You can check county records." She stepped closer, voice rising. "I am the HOA compliance chair, and you are violating community standards by restricting access." "I'm restricting access because it's my backyard," I said. "You're trespassing." Her eyes narrowed. That's when I saw it, the thrill. Karen didn't want compliance. She wanted control. "You'll regret this," she snapped. "My husband is a police officer." There it was. The classic Karen finisher. I smiled politely. Good for him. She stormed out, muttering into her phone. By that evening, I'd already logged the encounter in my secure notes. Something about her confidence felt rehearsed, like she'd done this before and gotten away with it. The next morning, I woke up to a notice taped to my door. HOA violation. Unauthorized restriction of community amenities. Penalty pending. Access keys required. I tore it down, snapped photos, and forwarded everything to my handler. His reply came fast. "Interesting? Her husband's name?" I sent it. 3 dots appeared, then stopped. Then came the response that made me sit up straight.
"Yeah.
"We've got a file on him." That's when I knew this wasn't just a neighborhood squabble. This was about to get very real. 2 days later, right on schedule, a black and white patrol cruiser rolled up my driveway. I watched from the kitchen window. Coffee in hand, heart steady. The man who stepped out was tall, broad-shouldered, uniform crisp. Officer Mark Reynolds, Karen's husband. He didn't knock. He banged. I opened the door calmly. "Sir," he said, hand resting near his belt, "we've had a complaint regarding refusal to provide HOA access to shared property." By the time the sun dipped behind the row of identical rooftops, Cedar Ridge Estates no longer felt like a neighborhood, it felt like a crime scene. Unmarked black SUVs lined both sides of the street, their engines humming softly like predators, at rest. Men and women in plain clothes moved with calm efficiency, flashing badges, knocking on doors, speaking in low, deliberate tones. Yellow tape fluttered around the small HOA office near the community mailbox, a place Karen once ruled like a throne room. Now, it was sealed. Karen stood in the middle of her manicured lawn, hair disheveled, phone clutched in her hand, screaming at no one who would listen. "This is a mistake," she shouted. "You can't just come in here. This is private property. I run this HOA." Her voice cracked not from fear yet, but from disbelief. Karen had spent years believing the rules protected her. She never imagined the rules could turn on her. Inside my house, the mood was calm but heavy. I sat at my dining table with my handler and 2 senior FBI agents. Files were spread out everywhere. HOA bylaws, financial statements, bank transfers, email chains, handwritten violation, logs. What had started as a dispute over pool access had unraveled into something far uglier. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was harvesting power. For years, she had selectively enforced HOA regulations targeting elderly homeowners, single parents, renters, and anyone who looked unlikely to fight back. Fines would escalate rapidly. Appeals would mysteriously disappear. Waivers were offered, quietly, to those willing to cooperate. And cooperation usually meant money. Money routed through shell, scary consultation firms that all traced back to the same circle of police officers, including her husband. She built a pressure cooker, one agent said, tapping a spreadsheet, then used her husband as the release valve. If a homeowner resisted, a patrol car would show up. Noise complaint, welfare check, suspected vandalism, always something vague, always just intimidating enough. No arrest, no reports filed. Just fear. My case changed everything because it was documented, clean, recorded, undeniable. Karen didn't know she'd crossed. Someone trained to watch patterns, preserve evidence, and wait patiently. Outside, the shouting stopped. I glanced out the window. Karen was being questioned. Two agents stood with her now. Calm, unshaken. One asked questions, the other took notes. Karen gestured wildly toward my house, toward the pool fence, toward the street, as if the entire neighborhood itself was betraying her. This is harassment, she snapped. My husband is a decorated officer. You're targeting us. One of the agents looked up slowly. No, ma'am, he said evenly. We're documenting you. That word, documenting, hit her like a slap. Her confidence wavered for the first time. Across the street, neighbors peeked through blinds. Doors cracked open. People whispered. For years, Karen had been untouchable. Seeing her questioned publicly was like watching gravity suddenly reassert itself. Then the cuffs came out. Karen laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. This is ridiculous. You can't arrest me for running an HOA. The agent didn't smile. You're not being detained for HOA violations, he said. You're being detained for conspiracy, financial fraud, and coercion. Her laughter died instantly. What about my husband? She demanded. Where is my husband? The agent paused, just long enough to make it hurt. He's already in custody. Karen's knees buckled. She grabbed the arm of one agent, suddenly desperate. No, you don't understand. He was just helping. This was all legal. Everyone knew. That's the problem, the agent replied. Too many people knew, and too many people were afraid to speak. She screamed when the cuffs locked. It echoed down the street, bouncing off garage doors, an identical ficcato sound of rage, shock, and a lifetime of entitlement collapsing all at once. Later that night, the HOA board members arrived one by one, summoned for routine questioning. None of them left untouched. Some cried, some begged, some blamed Karen. Emails surfaced, messages they thought were deleted, votes they claimed never happened. Silence, it turned out, was expansive. By morning, every single board member had resigned. The HOA bank accounts were frozen. Residents began gathering in small groups, whispering, sharing stories for the first time. She'll find me $3,000 for a mailbox, one woman said. They threatened to tow my car every week, another admitted. I thought it was just me, an older man murmured, eyes wet. I thought it was crazy. That was the worst part. Karen hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen peace. Inside my house, my handler closed the final folder. I raise an eyebrow, and you're here. As a cop? Or as Karen's husband? His jaw tightened. Watch your tone. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. This is a civil HOA matter, not criminal. You're out of jurisdiction. He smirked. Actually, we've had reports of disorderly conduct and threats. From who? My wife? Ah, of course. He glanced past me, eyes locking onto the pool through the fence. Hand over the keys, he said. I laughed softly, incredulously. No. His voice dropped. If you don't comply, I can cite you for obstruction. That was the moment I activated my recorder. Officer Reynolds, I said evenly, are you threatening me under color of law to resolve a private HOA dispute? His eyes flickered. This for a split second. You're being difficult, he growled. I'm being documented, I replied. He stepped closer. It's too close. Last chance. I leaned in slightly and whispered, you really don't want to do this. He shoved past me, toward the side gate. That's when I raised my voice. Officer Reynolds, you are trespassing on private property. He froze. Slowly, he turned around. You don't want to tell me what's private, he said. My wife runs this HOA. I nodded. That's the problem. I pulled out my phone, not to call anyone, but to show him something. A simple ID. Federal, sealed, very real. His face drained of color. What the hell is that? He whispered. I'm undercover with the FBI, I said calmly. And you just made my day. Silence hung heavy. Then his radio crackled. Unit 12. Report immediately. Internal affairs request. He stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. Set me up, he hissed. No, I replied. You walked in. He left without another word, tires squealing as he backed out. Within an hour, black SUVs appeared down the street. Karine came running out of her house, shrieking, and for the first time, the whole neighborhood started paying attention. You did exactly what you were supposed to, he said. You didn't react. You didn't escalate. You let them expose themselves. I nodded, staring at the pool through the window. All of this over keys that never existed. Karen had wanted control, validation, submission. Instead, she'd given federal investigators a blueprint to dismantle her entire operation. By the time the sun rose again, Cedar Ridge Estates was no longer under HOA control, and Karen's kingdom built on fear, favors, and borrowed authority was officially gone. The water in my pool was still, but beneath the surface, everything had changed. the morning after Kieran's arrest, Cedar Ridge Estates didn't wake up the same. No HOA patrol car cruised the streets. No violation notices fluttered on doors. No cameras blinked from mailboxes like silent threats. For the first time since I'd moved in, the neighborhood felt human. Sunlight hit the pool water just right that morning, scattering soft reflections across my kitchen ceiling. I stood there longer than usual, coffee cooling in my hand, listening to the quiet, not the tense, watching kind of quiet, but the kind that breathes. By noon, word had spread. Karen had taken a plea deal. Not because she wanted to, but because the evidence made fighting pointless. Financial fraud, coercion, conspiracy enough to bury her in legal fees alone. Prison wasn't on the table, but neither was redemption. Her husband wasn't offered the same mercy. Officer Mark Reynolds was charged with abuse of authority, intimidation under color of law, and obstruction of justice. His badge was confiscated. The night he was arrested, by the end of the week, his name had vanished from the department's website like he'd never existed. Years of power, gone in days. County officials stepped in to oversee Cedar Ridge temporarily. The HOA was officially dissolved pending investigation, and every fine issued in the last 5 years was put under review. Refund checks were promised, lawsuits followed, class actions multiplied. But the most surprising part, the neighbors came out, one by one. They walked their dogs a little slower, stood on their driveways a little longer, talked. A woman 2 houses down stopped. Me, while I was checking my mail? I just wanted to say thank you, she said quietly. You didn't have to fight her. But you did. An older man nodded from behind her. You were the first person who ever said no? That word no had been the most dangerous thing in Cedar Ridge. I floated in the pool again that evening. Same water, same fence. Everything felt different. No eyes, no judgment, no imaginary rules hovering in the air. The irony still made me smile. Karen never wanted the pool. She wanted obedience. And the keys, she demanded. They never existed. There were no keys to give her. The gate used a private coded lock installed long before the HOA was even formed. She'd never bothered to check the records because she never expected anyone to challenge her. Power had made her lazy. A week later, I met my handler for the last time in Cedar Ridge. You could have blown your cover earlier, he said. Ended, Dispasare shrugged. Then we'd only have one arrest. He smirked. Instead we cleaned house. The investigation didn't stop with Karen. Her case cracked open a network of HOA law enforcement favoritism across 3 counties. Quiet threats. Selective enforcement. Uniforms used as leverage. Everything built on the assumption that no one would push back. They were wrong. My assignment ended shortly after. Another name, another city, another quiet house, where no one would look twice at me. That's how it always goes on my last night. I stood by the pool and watched the sunset reflect off the water. Neighbors laughed somewhere down the street. A kid rode a bike past my fence without fear of being fined for it. Cedar Ridge wasn't perfect now, but it was free. Karen's house sat dark. Her lawn, once flawless, was already starting to yellow. No signs, no notices, no authority left to enforce the image she'd obsessed over. Power, I'd learned. It doesn't disappear loudly. It leaks out slowly until there's nothing left to hold. I locked the gate behind me and slid my phone into my pocket, somewhere else. Another Karen was probably gearing up for a fight she didn't understand, and somewhere else, someone would finally say, no, the water settled, and for once it stayed that way.